We now know, as we said, 7 people were killed and at least 35 more were injured. We know a lot of social media video captured the sound of the gunfire and all of the terror that followed. We now want to bring in ABC News' Stephanie Ramos, who's on the ground there in Highland Park, as well as ABC News Chief Investigative Reporter Josh Margolin, who's with me here in New York. Stephanie, we will begin with you. We just learned that 7th person who died here. There were, of course, dozens more who were injured. So what's the latest here, first and foremost, on the victims in this shooting?
Trevor, we understand 14 victims are still hospitalized, and we're slowly learning more and more about them. We understand that a grandmother and a grandfather are hospitalized and being treated, and their granddaughter had posted that her grandparents had been shot and that her younger brother had also been shot. They are being treated. We are also learning that a local teacher was also injured. She was also one of the shooting victims, as well as her father, her husband, and her brother-in-law, all of this happening in front of their young children. So we also know that 5 of the victims died at the scene, and now we know that 2 victims have died at the hospital.
Josh, I want to bring you in because I know investigators have revealed a lot of details about how this investigation is playing out. They had a lot this afternoon about him going up to the roof, firing down. We also learned that he was dressed in drag, and I believe that you've actually helped us with acquiring a photo of that. I don't know if we can pull that up or not, but what's the latest? We don't have the photo yet, but about how this shooter went about this incident.
Well, law enforcement now has given a very, very detailed account, adding to what we knew yesterday. And it appears that there was a lot of pre-planning. He was able to access this roof. An elevated location is a terrible thing for the potential victims because it gives the shooter a better vantage point, a tactical advantage. And so we know about that. We know that he used this costume. He dressed up as a woman, they believe, to be able to blend in either before he did the shooting or in his getaway. He was able to get away from the location. He left the gun behind so he wouldn't draw attention to himself. It seems there was a lot of planning, and we also now know that the investigators are looking farther back than just yesterday.
Yeah.
What motivated him? Why did he do this? It was a terrible, terrible thing. It's becoming terribly commonplace in America, but let's not forget, this is a terrible, terrible thing.
Right. Stephanie, on that subject, I mean, the community here, obviously not the first to be reeling from such a tragedy, but what does the community have to say in the wake of what's happened here?
They're coming together to find strength, and they're devastated. It's obviously a very difficult time, and one thing that we've heard before is that, you know, they want these things to stop happening. People want these shootings to stop happening. And one thing that I have heard here is a lot of frustration. What keeps coming up is that gun control and gun safety isn't a Republican or Democrat issue. Some people here have said it's a safety issue, and they're frustrated. They're angered that this could have happened at a 4th of July parade. Nowhere is safe, and they want something to be done about it. So aside from the sadness and those families that are grieving, they are just desperate for change, and they're frustrated because they don't see that happening in the near future.
Josh, I know that you've confirmed from a number of law enforcement sources that this alleged shooter is speaking with investigators. He's made some statements taking responsibility here. And we'd already heard from investigators that this suspect was known to police, but not for violent issues. But you've actually learned about an incident that police weren't involved in at a synagogue? Right.
It's coming clear now that just in recent months, during Passover in the springtime, the suspected shooter showed up at a local synagogue during services, and he was approached by congregants, maybe the rabbi, security. He was lurking around, is what we were told.
Okay.
Nothing violent, want to be very, very clear. And he left of his own volition. But he looked out of place. He was out of place. And anybody that's been to a synagogue knows that it's easy to be out of place and to feel out of place unless you're familiar with it. It's concerning because we've seen attacks on all sorts of religious installations, religious locations. especially and including synagogues. Additionally, law enforcement is looking at the online trail of the suspect.
Right.
And that includes some references to white nationalist themes and ideology. And the concern is, and has been since yesterday, this is a community with a heavy Jewish population. Could this have been an attack that was aimed toward Jews? Now, law enforcement did say today that they have no reason to believe it was. From his statements, from what they're getting online, they don't know that it was something that was racially or ethnically motivated, but that's an angle of the investigation.
Or at least no reason so far. To believe that. And
Absolutely.
We now have that photo of the suspect. This is from law enforcement sources. This is the suspect here, dressed up, as they say, as a woman, according to authorities, in order to disguise himself after he allegedly fired all of those shots from the roof, and then was able to escape in the crowd before he was eventually captured here. Josh, I mean, when you talk especially about a suspect that was posting online repeatedly, and this suspect has a lot of former posts, I mean, what are we talking about in terms of evidence for investigators to try to comb through and maybe find a motive here? As
we've seen with a number of these mass shootings, most of them, there is this trail of evidence that's left behind. Even ones that these people that get killed in committing the attack. And so that's what they've been doing since yesterday. They want to see what motivated him. But at bottom, the question that law enforcement is grappling with is, what's the real difference? Right? If we find out that he was motivated by ethnic hate or religious hate, or just motivated by some sort of demon in his life, or motivated by some sort of workplace issue, people have been killed. Another mass shooting in America, another day with a body count.
Right. On that subject, Josh, I mean, it's one thing to say, you know, the shootings keep happening and the shootings keep happening, but each one individually is unique. Is there something about this that shows an evolution about how these shootings are happening?
Well, law enforcement believes that they build on one on another. And so people who might be predisposed to violence see violent acts, and that triggers something in them. So 20 years ago, they were very rare, but they happened. And we've seen since Columbine that they've gotten more and more frequent, to the point now we're talking about 3 major mass shootings in just the last number of weeks: in Buffalo, in Uvalde, Texas, and now here in Highland Park, Illinois. 3 very different communities, 3 very different suspected gunmen, but the net effect is the same.
Right, of course. And Stephanie, we've heard from law enforcement already this afternoon, but we're expecting to hear from them again in about an hour or so. What have been the key takeaways so far, and what are still the key unanswered questions we're looking to learn?
Well, one unanswered question is the motive. Why? Why did this suspected shooter do this? And we are learning more about a timeline. Investigators, we know, are collecting all of the evidence that they can. They've collected video from witnesses that were there. They've collected video from fixed cameras that were in the neighborhood, that were in the area. And they're speaking with the suspected shooter's family and others. So we know that this is still obviously an ongoing investigation. They're collecting as much as they can to kind of figure out why and how.
All right, Stephanie Ramos for us in Highland Park, Illinois, and Josh Margolin, our chief investigative reporter. We appreciate both of you joining us.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.